We are recording. We are now recording. We were not recording before. Thank you, Ronald, for that question. um, we are recording partly because as it is January 31. Lots of people will have wanted to have been here who will not be here. And several people have asked us to record as well. But we're also hoping to post this subsequently on a channel. Can I say this, Ronald? No, I cannot say this. Okay, on a channel to come. We will see. I should also say one last thing to do before I go into how we will organize ourselves today. I chose today, in spite of it being January 31 and everybody having commitments, lots of people having commitments elsewhere, because I sometimes attempt to celebrate Kwanzaa. And I thought that the day committed to celebrating and exchanging thoughts about creativity would be an appropriate moment to reflect on the life and work of Eddie Baugh and to share our joy in his writing. So there are a few people who committed in advance to reading particular selections. So we are going to start with them. But what I'm going to ask is for those of you who are gathered here to enter your name and your selection. Oh, by the way, I'm fully aware that there are going to be particular poems that everybody wants to read. Like everybody love them. Right? So I will in a moment indicate which poems are already committed so that when you put your name and your selection in the chat, you can, ignore those. So far, from what I can see on my screen, everyone is muted. Yeah, we're all familiar with Zoom protocol now. Excellent. Okay, so screenshot. So the people in advance who have committed and who will start off the sharing while you are entering in the chat your what you would like to share are Amina Blackwood Meeks with, I think, an all-time favorite. It was the singing, and I would like to start with that one. Um, Ronald Cummings with, remind me of the title, Ronald, in the middle of the story or something like that?
A rain washed town by the sea.
Change. Okay, a rain washed down by the sea. You will tell us why, but I can imagine why you've chosen that one. Joma, your selection?
You ever notice how?
Mhm. So that's 1, 2, 3, and my selection is the Warner Woman. So those are the 4 that we will begin with, and I should say that when Amina has shared, I will open the floor to people who would like to respond and comment on that particular poem before we move on to the next one. Yes, any questions before we begin the flow? Going. Okay. Any questions subsequently can, of course, be put in the chat. All right. So, Amina.
Carolyn, good evening,
Yes?
everyone. I wanted to know, will you?
Jamie, I'm so sorry. Thank you for speaking up.
Okay.
I'm very embarrassed. Jamie is
Okay.
actually the one who wrote, emailed, and sent me her selection. So certainly, would you tell me if you would prefer to do that after the poems, or?
I can do it wherever you think I should do it.
Okay,
Wherever
so
you put me is fine.
all right, fine. So then I will ask you to do it after the 4th poem. In other
Okay,
words,
sure.
after me.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, fine. So Amina, oh, a hand is up.
There's
Is
a
it
hand
down?
up.
A hand was up a while ago.
It look like Erna's.
Oh, okay. I thought it was an Armstrong.
Oh,
Joma, anything that you want me to deal with before?
Oh, just a quick reminder to put all mics on mute when the persons are presenting the poems. Apart from that, I think I'm good. And I'm
Okay.
monitoring the chat as well.
Okay, Carlton. Laurie, mute, please. Okay. Okay. Oh, there's an echo. Is that from a mic that's open?
Yes, but I'm also going through the chat and muting
And muting
mics
them.
of the
Okay,
persons,
good.
right?
So
So we're good.
I can stop worrying about that. Okay. And we can begin. Amina.
Good evening, everyone.
Before she starts, just a suggestion to pin her to the screen so your recording highlights the speaker. So you can either choose spotlight or pin, Jomo.
Carolyn, may I go ahead, please? I was saying good evening, everyone. I'm not given to reminiscing and recollecting thoughts after someone has transitioned, because somehow I feel that if we never learn from the person in this life, we only listen to hearsay. But I certainly am grateful that our paths crossed and that Professor Baugh was and always will be a light that guides us. It was the singing, girl, the singing. It was that full my throat and blind my eye with sunlight. Parson preached good and didn't give we no long meter that day. And Judge Hackett make us laugh to hear how from school days Gertie was a rebel. And everybody proud how Sharon talked strong about her mother and hold her tears. But the singing was sermon and lesson and eulogy and more. And it was only when we raised how great thou art that I really feel the sadness and the glory wave after wave. Daddy Walters draw a bass from somewhere we never hear him go before. And Maisie lift a descant and nobody asked her, but it was the gift they bring. It was what they had to give. And greater than the paper money overflowing the collection plate. It was then that I know we was people together. Never mind the bad-minded and the carried down. And I even find it in my heart to forgive that ungrateful Agnes for everything she do me. And I sing. And the feeling swelling in my chest till I had to stop and swallow. Ah. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. And we was girls again together, Gertie and me by the river. And then the singing was like a wide water and Gertie laughing and waving to me from the other side. Girl, I can't too well describe it. Was like the singing was bigger than all of we and making us better than we think we could be. And all I asking you, girl, is when my time come to go. Don't worry, make no fuss about pretty cotton and no long eulogy. Just a quiet place where gunman and drug addict don't haunt. And if they sing me home, like how they sing Gertie, I say, thank you, Jesus. My soul will sleep in peace.
Remember to unmute. Remember to unmute.
Of course, thank you. It would be best if people would raise a hand. I don't think I had said anything terribly significant while I was muted. Would raise a hand for comments now if they wish to share before we move to the second poem in response to It Was the Singing.
Me
Okay.
kinda craving though. I would love to hear what you were saying while you didn't know that you were muted.
But that would require that I remember. I think I had said something complimentary about the reading. Thank you so much. And I had thanked you. It was wonderful. Um, I know there's a memory for some of us of Jean Small reading that on the occasion when we were saying his retirement function at UA. I was not present, but I have heard many people speak about it. It is one of those poems that warms the heart. Our second selection is from Ronald, who will take us to Port Antonio.
Hi everyone. Yes, so Eddie Baugh and I both share Port Antonio. Um, he was born there and grew up there and went to uh Titchfield High School, which is the school that I went to. And so I've always had this connection with his poetry and with his writing of Port Antonio. So I thought I'd read one of the Port Antonio poems. Um, so the poem I've chosen, and there are a number of Port Antonio poems where he kind of writes what I think of as the geography of my childhood, but it was also his town, right? So I've chosen to read A Rain-Washed Town by the Sea. And it's useful to note that this poem closes all of Eddie Baugh's poetry books. So in some ways, it becomes a kind of benediction. A rain-washed town by the sea. The scrunch of the kitchen knife through the long stalks of ginger lilies I cut for my mother this leaf-moist morning. Their sharp scent pierces me. Way above the trumpet tree, noisy with the gossip of birds, improbably far, the silver stylus of a jet stalks the arrow of my ambition across immaculate blue. Even as I gaze, it dissolves in puff balls of vapor. From my school desk, carved with the names of the lost, the heroes, I shall dream on the cobalt sea. By midday, it will rain extravagantly. The gutters will gurgle with delight. These memories define me. I keep them against that moment when my eyes no longer turn to greet the sun. It's a short poem.
Thank you so much. One of the things that when people were responding to the news of his passing, Ronald shared on Facebook, and his comments included reference to a walking tour that we had done. This is writing roots off the page that we had done some years ago, and I see Randy Christensen in the room, and she was, it was well, it was staged for her and her fellow writers who had come to Calabash. We did it as a post Calabash experience, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful. We actually did less than had been written on paper, but we were quite full before, so we ended it. It was wonderful, and it is something that we dream of doing again. And some people have expressed interest, so we will talk. Thank you, Ronald. And yes, there are quite a few Port Antonio poems, so it was not difficult to organize a tour around them. Number 3, Jomo.
Greetings again, everyone. First of all, let me just leave it. Thank you so much for creating space, especially this space, Auntie C. And thank you so much for all the persons to whom we've looked, meaning, you know, younger persons who are dabbling in poetry and just expressing a love for literature have looked to for inspiration, for knowledge. Thank you so much for that. And with that said, you know, I'm grateful enough to have been introduced to Carpenter's Complaint back in high school, which left a mark because, you know, I too went through JCDC performing. But the piece that I'll be presenting today, I think there was a point in point in time not so long ago when I decided that I wanted to join, you know, the writers and I wanted to add my story to the canon. And, you know, I remember distinctly sitting in the couch and drawing for a poem just to feel what that rhythm feels like that I was chasing after so much. And so this poem that I'm going to share, I hope to do Prof. Baugh's reading justice. So bear with me, please, as I dive into You Ever Notice How. Here we go. You ever notice how after the maximum leader has spoken the night's last great self-same expected speech, the faithful start to party and the square break away, a carnival of hips and waving arms, rocking to roots reggae boom from speaker boxes bigger and more durable than poor people's houses. And you ever notice how when that happened, the maximum leader start to look wrong, grinning obtusely at what he has let loose and trying to dance, but him can't catch the beat. And is like the crowd don't need him now. And the camera backing away for a long shot and him getting lost in the crowd and him just look wrong. A little man who have a plan that only him one understand and him just look wrong. The leader who can dance the people music and is always the same. Check me again tomorrow night, same time, same square, different set of players, different color costume, but the same script, different maximum, but the same two left foot that missing the beat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joba. That is one of my favorite ones too. I just the line about you know, the out of step, the out of rhythm thing is just spot on. Thank you very much. Anybody would like to make comments about any of the readings so far? Well, I mean, spoken comments. I've been seeing some of the comments coming up in the chat. Thank you. Um, spoken comments about the reading so far. If not, I'm going to Colleen, thank you very much helping me with the spotlight. Somehow this speaker view thing, yeah, doesn't seem to be in real time. And for the just tell me if you're good with going through if the checklist of what people have said in the chat in terms of what they want to read. Because mine will be the last of the, no, that mine is not the last. Jamie is the next. After that, we go to the list in the chat. So my chosen poem is The Warner Woman, and it's because I think I have a thing for the Carpenter's Complaint as well, but I'll leave that commentary about that until somebody reads it. But so the Carpenter's Complaint and at least and a few others were more familiar to me before I buck up on this one. But when I buck up on this one, there are lines in it that are just I can't recover from. It's just so beautiful to me and so vivid. It makes me able to see Port Antonio. And sorry, I'm just changing my view. Right. And so I hope, like Jomo said, yeah, to do it justice. Okay, The Wonder Woman. The morning shimmers in its bowl of blue crystal. Me, underneath my mother's bed, I delight in dust and dimness. Connoisseur of comics and the coolness of floorboards, I prolong my life's long morning. But the blue sky broke. The Warner woman, bell-mouthed and biblical, she trumpeted out of the hills. Prophet of doom, prophet of God, breeze blow and earthquake, tidal wade and flood. I crouched, I cowered. I remembered Port Royal. I could see the waters of East Harbor rise. I saw them heave Caneside Bridge. Dear God, don't make me die. Not now, not yet. Well, the sky regained its blue composure. Day wound slowly down to darkness. Lunchtime came, then supper time, then dream time and forgetting. Haven't heard a Warner woman these 30 odd years. Thank you. And so it's now over to Jamie.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to read an excerpt from Professor Baugh's 1977 article entitled Cuckoo and Culture in the Castle of My Skin, because I was first introduced to Professor Baugh through his work as a literary critic. Okay, all right, so in this essay, in this article, it's an analysis of Barbadian literary artist George Lamming's 1953 classic novel, In the Castle of My Skin. George Lamming's In the Castle of My Skin ends with the protagonist, G, leaving his island, Barbados, for the first time to take a job in Trinidad, and so begin his adult and perhaps lonely journey through the world. His decision to leave is a deliberate but painful choice. His going marks not only a momentous turning point in his own life, a culmination of the process of personal growth, which the novel traces, but also an epochal point in the history of the island, and more particularly, the community of which he has been a part. The momentousness of the departure and the ominousness and uncertainty with which it is invested are emphasized by the fact that the last picture we get of G is of him walking alone into the night. The darkness
Jomo, did you mute
It seems I made a faux
Jamie?
pas. Apologize.
Right. So could you go back one sentence, please, Jamie? Sorry, apologies.
She's still muted.
Yeah, please go ahead and unmute, and then you can start again, please.
Oh, okay, sure. Thank you. The momentousness of the departure and the ominousness and uncertainty with which it is invested are emphasized by the fact that the last picture we get of G is of him walking alone into the night, the darkness suggesting all the danger and uncertainty ahead, the beckoning terror of the unknown, as well as the darkness of his ignorance, which he must seek to enlighten. The occasion of the final scene between G in the Castle of My Skin and his mother is a meal, the last she prepares for him. The dish she serves is a Barbadian specialty, flying fish and cuckoo. And there is one section of the narrative which is particularly intriguing and which I shall focus on in this paper. This is the detailed account of the mother's preparation of the meal, especially the cuckoo. Its very presence in the novel might seem odd. It is as though Lamming has interrupted the narrative, and his portrayal of the relationship between boy and mother interrupted it for the space of 3 long paragraphs to describe in detail how the mother made the cuckoo, to give, in short, the recipe for cuckoo. Was this merely a piece of exotica, a dash of tropical color for the English market in which the book was to be published? This view might be encouraged by two details which show Laming catering to a non-Barbadian audience. Having mentioned cornflower, Laming glosses this by saying, quote, "It was a yellow powder almost as fine as dust," end quote. Indeed, to use the term cornflower was probably a compromise with the foreign audience, since the normal term is cornmeal. Later, referring to the stick used to stir the cornmeal as it cooks, Laming says she, quote, "had put the slab of wood, which we called the cuckoo stick, to soak in a bowl of water," end quote. Alternatively, was Laming primarily indulging his nostalgia for flying fish and cuckoo? What I should like to show is that this account of the preparation of the meal is an integral part of Laming's artistic control of the narrative, and that it embodies and brings into sharp focus, certain vital concerns of the novel. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. And I recognize in the gathering both former colleagues and many past students of Prof. Baugh. So I think you have a fair amount of company in having met him first through his critical writing. He was I was going through videos today and experiencing various people commenting on the effect of having been taught by him and how much it inspired them to become teachers of literature. We have two persons who have offered to read and one that I'm going to request to read. So in the sequence coming up, Carolyn Dyche, Running River Water, Joseph Farquharson Carpenter's Complaint, both on the faculty at Mona, and then a poet. I'm going to ask Malachi if he can to read his tribute that he entered in the chat to share that with us. Yes, Jomo, I see your finger. You're muted, Jomo. And I muted myself when you were saying that.
Yeah, I was just saying there's a third person that wanted to read sometimes in the middle of the story, but they hadn't indicated their name.
Sometimes in the middle of the story. Oh yes, that is, you see, what has happened was that someone was going to read that. Okay, so could we have the name of the reader of Sometimes in the Middle of the Story? And as we are getting that, Carolyn, over to you. The cute cap.
Hi, Carolyn, my namesake. Yeah, I'm actually battling COVID. I missed this. That's why the cap. Not fit really for video play, but here we go. I wanted to read Running River Water and put it in the context of the first edition you will see of Pathways, which was an anthology that came out of the Department of English. It was at the time when I was a student there, spearheaded really by Dr. Victor Chang of blessed memory. And how that links to Professor Baugh was not only that he supported us, as you can see, this type of style. I was just finding it the back is on the front, the symbol for leg. Pathways did continue and became much more illustrious than this collection of yellow kind of paper. But the thing is that Professor Baugh and Mervyn Morris very graciously said they would contribute a poem to it. So it was a collection of student writing, and Nadi, myself, Dr. Chang, and Denelyn Carroll were the editorial committee. And I'm looking back at it now and seeing there isn't even a date on the volume, much less a table of contents. That's how amateur it was. But anyway,
keep forgetting to do that, dates. We don't think of what, of posterity in the future. Yeah, it's a common problem. Lovely contextualizing. Thanks.
No, it was.
You're breaking up. You're breaking up sometimes. Could you say that again?
Okay. Are you hearing me a little better now?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Running river water. I see you by rivers and big-leaved trees. I dip my hands in running river water and cool the throbbing of your temples. I am honored by the occasions when your eyelids flutter like frightened birds. Deep river woman, you bear like a covenant the memory of mountain huts and yam hills. The kreng full and savory against hard times. You whisper like beatitudes the unwritten histories of flight and ambush and survival. Woman river, I dip my hands in running river water and say, run free, run free. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. If there are no hands, it's on to Joseph Farquharson with the carpenter's complaint.
Okay, I'm trying to start my video, but I think
Okay.
this is probably the universe trying to spare everybody. Okay,
Oh, there you are.
the universe changed its mind. The carpenter's complaint. No, you think that is right, sir? Talk the truth. The man was my friend. I built it. I built the house that him live in. But now that him dead, that maga foot boy, him son, come say him want a nice job for the coffin. So him give it to Mr. Bell Nevis to make. That big belly crook who don't know him arse from a chisel. But because him is big shot, because he make big shot coffin for him coffin must better than mine. Boy, it hurt me. It hurt me for true. Fix your next one, Miss Fergie. That man could have knocked back him waters, you know, sir. I remember the day in the said same bar when him drink old brown and coxing into the ground, then stand up straight as a plumb line and kill him felt hat on him head and walk home cool, cool, cool. Them was water bird, brother. Funeral? Me, sir? That boy have to learn that a man having pride. But bless me days, good enough to build the house that him live in, but not good enough to make him coffin. I would have do it for nothing, for nothing. The man was my friend. Damn maga foot boy. It's university turn him fool. I tell you, it burned me. It burned me for true. That was the carpenter's complaint.
Wonderful. That is an absolute favorite of mine. And I had one of those, I'm sure we have all had, eureka moments. I had one of those eureka moments some years after, I think, after I first met the poem. And I thought, hold on a second, but Baugh must be the Magafoot boy. Now that I've seen in videos that in commentaries, in readings more recently, he has confessed to being the Magafoot boy. So that line that says, the line that triggered that thought was, of course, it's university turning fool, so that I now think of the carpenter's complaint as the penance poem, as his apology to the carpenter for losing touch with that community ethic, perhaps. It really is wonderful. And this is the point at which I need to hear from Malachi. If he's here, your hand, Jomo. I see your hand. But
that's me?
Yes, I see your hand.
Real quick, just on the tail of the carpenter's complaints, also one of my favorite lines or the idea is the good enough to build a house that he lives in. When you're alive, this is what held you, but not good enough to send you home, which is really painful when you think about it. Extremely painful. So that really resonated.
I think it was in the video at the session at Boca's Lit Fest when he was being interviewed by Ashton Hutchinson. I think it's when he read it there that he explained why he had chose that it was him and why he had chosen Belle Nevis and so on. It was just, yeah, there was no funeral parlor, and Belle Nevis was the one who was, the official, right? But yeah, that there's something with a community ethic there that he was out of touch with at the time, and regretted, and came to regret when he heard of the complaint. Malachi, I see you.
Greetings.
Greetings.
Yes.
Welcome.
Well, thank you so much. This is so rich. Yes. So, once Professor Baugh died, I kept on thinking, hearing the poem after the singing, going over and over in my head, so much so that I had to play it a number of times. Because I had a radio program, and strictly roots dub poetry and more. And I used to play a lot of dub poems. And I'm fortunate to be on that album that he has that recording and that Yasso Safari produced. And so this little poem came to me, and I'd like to share it. After it was the singing for Professor Edward Baugh. It was the singing that brings him home, the statue of the man, standing tall like a mountain, towering over many hills that he gave birth to, and his voice whistling down from treetop to roots all the way down to the sea. Waves and waves of his voice coming so clear as silver spring, filling us people with goosebumps, for it forces us to see each other just as we are, from the same cloth, no different colors or pattern, same stitching, pretty ugly, out of many one. We look to the mountain now, from us Eddie dead. It knot up with throat. It wet with eyes as we gag with whites, for the pitch have to be right. We have to hit it and hold it, for although him turning back, his voice must remain. So let us bring the chorus from deep inside, just pure harmonies, and how you feel it, make the melody burst out like the singing of a spring, make it become a river, and don't try to stop it, make it find its way to the sea, and let it wash over wave after wave, wash away all the malice and bad mind, the little things that keep us small, till the only thing that is left is the singing wave after wave, singing just like Uncle Eddie, singing and laughing and waving from the other side of the river, from under a quiet shady tree with Agnes and Gertie by his side, with the sunlight from his face opening our eyes to paradise. Give thanks.
Give thanks. Thank you so much. A truly fitting tribute. I wondered about it, and I think I'm beginning to get emotional. I was reading through the comments. So a hand was up. Joseph, you had your hand up. Can we take your comment now?
Yes, that was me. I wanted to comment selfishly on the carpenter's complaint, because you brought it up and you kept on mentioning
go right ahead.
Ethics. Community ethics, especially for those of us who straddle two worlds, this kind of rural community that we hail from, and I'm claiming rural now, although I was born in a city in Montego Bay, but spent quite a lot of time in what would be considered rural. And then eventually spending most of our time in what is practically a different kind of world with different values, etc. And I think it's that sort of tension that Baugh brings out. And I think somewhere along the line, either we didn't understand or we forget that some of the things that are important in the communities we have left, they might seem very minor to us, but they mean a whole lot for the people. And it's not really about the money. It's not about how much you can pay in dollar value, but how much those small gestures mean as we do them for each other. I wanted to say too that Carolyn Cooper has been harping on the fact that she has been asking Prof. Baugh for decades, I think, to write his memoirs, and he, refused to. And in her newspaper column yesterday, she said, "But hold on, it's his, he has written his memoirs, but it's in his poems, because if you go through his poetry, so much of it is about his communities, plural, the communities that he has been in. And what he has done is to find spaces for voices that would have been neglected, that would not have been listened to. So, a quiet woman in a corner mumbling to herself, a carpenter complaining, somebody reflecting on death and so on. In all of that, he has managed to write his life, but a lot of it through the voices of other people. Some he may have interacted with, some may have been, characters along the way. And I think, this is what is brilliant about Prof. Baugh's poetry. Thanks.
Yes, indeed. He has used the dramatic monologue exceptionally well. And his comment on Carpenter's complaint also said that for years he was trying to write the poem, but he was thinking of writing it from his own point of view to express his regret. And it was when he thought, no, but it should be in the voice of the carpenter himself that the poem came. I was going to. So, sorry, Jomo, there was something you wanted to say?
Yes, just listening to that on community, it's so fascinating because, so much of my peers consider poetry inaccessible, and I have to somewhat create space for that truth, because we are contending with pop culture that is so readily accessible through social media. So there's a lot of poetry, quote unquote music, pop music, that competes with things that are of a particular lineage. And so I also wanted to express gratitude because, following along the thread of what Malachi was saying, the hills, you all here in this room are the hills. And I'm looking in the chat and I'm seeing Suzanne Beadle also here, who is responsible for introducing the poetry and the poet to so many of myself, to myself and so many of my peers. So I really wanted to also sing your praises, each and every one of the persons in this room who has been inspired by Prof. Baugh, and then would have passed on some of that inspiration to persons who would have otherwise never experienced that language, never experienced that finding of the voice. So I think that's a very meaningful aspect of the legacy to mention as well, that it's paid forward. So I just wanted to throw that in before I disappeared again.
Amen. Amen. Give thanks. Please do not disappear. Yes, and this I can see that this is a room full of teachers, of teachers and past students. It's wonderful. If we get a chance, we might invite some people to share what is their connection to Baugh, how they know him, that kind of thing. That might be also good for the record. I am going to take a comment that was not a comment, a request, in a way, a request that was made off air. One of my past students from university expressed the hope that a certain poem would be read. Sorry, I was just distracted by a student's comment. I'm trying not to be distracted in future. Yes, a past student of mine has expressed the hope that someone would read a certain poem, and it's one of the poems that I had marked in advance, looking for someone to read, and no one has offered yet. And it's dear to me as well, so I'm going to jump in and read again, taking host privileges. It's a poem entitled Words. My mother loved words, not necessarily in sentences or speeches, just words. She read the dictionary like a bedside book. She taught me words while I watched her at the crossword puzzle, her relief from drudgery. And now this delectable, mouth-filling word I cannot teach her. Metastases. Multiple metastases. The word glows a guilty secret through the large brown envelope lying on the back seat with the x-rays and the radiologist's report. She sits rigid with pain, too proud to ask if there is any word of relief. In the silence between us, you can hear the metastases multiply. I take a moment to breathe. So now, Joseph, is that a hand? Jomo, is that a, or is, what is that? That is applause, right? Joseph, is that a hand to speak?
No, it's applause.
It was applause. I thank you. So now, it would seem for the next half hour or so, the floor is open. So raise a hand and offer to share. If no hands come immediately, I would invite people to introduce themselves and say what your connection. Okay, sorry. So again, I said I wouldn't be, right? But I am distracted by comments. Is there anyone who would like to read sometimes in the middle of the story? We would very much like to hear it. Yes, Azika, that is what I would like to hear. Azika, would you like to read it?
Didn't Kai indicate that he was the one?
Kai?
Yeah.
Was that in the chat? Did I miss that? Okay, so it's over to Kai.
All right, let me find it. 1 second. All right, here we go. Sometimes in the middle of...
Spotlight. 1 second.
Yes, please, requesting that you share your camera if you can.
No, I'm naked. No, I'm just kidding. 1 sec, guys.
You don't think that would be a thrilling sight?
No, not right now. Where am I? Start video. Is that... Did that come up?
Yes, you are here, you and the image of you.
Yeah.
You live and the image of you. Mm-hmm.
Let's just ignore that. All right, here we go. Sometimes in the middle of the story for the drowned Africans of the Middle Passage. Sometimes in the middle of the story, something move outside the house like it could be the wind, but it's not the wind. And the storyteller hesitates so slight you hardly notice it. And the children hold their breath and look at one another. The old people says to Saul, passing on his grey horse, Bella Jean, moving faster than Bakra Masa timepiece, no to measure, briefing the captain, selling science and strategy to trap the emperor. But also, that sound had something in it of deep water, salt water, had ocean, the sleep sigh of a drowned African turning in his sleep on the ocean floor. And to Saw horse was coming from afar, his tail trailing the swish of the sea from secret rendezvous, from councils of war with those who never completed the journey. And we below deck heard only the muffled thud of scuffling feet, could only guess the quick, fierce tussle, the stifled gasp, the barrel chest bursting, the bubbles rising and breaking, the blue closing over. But their souls shuffle still the forest paths of ocean, connecting us still, the current unbroken, The circuits kept open, the tireless messengers, the ebony princes of your lost Atlantis, a power of black men rising from the sea.
Thank you. Give thanks.
Wow. Wow.
This is a very powerful poem. Breathe. Okay, so the floor is open. Oh. Yes, my video. Clicking buttons and buttons and buttons. Yes.
Hi, Carolyn.
Hi.
It's me.
Yes,
Jean.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't invite me. You didn't invite me to read, but if you had, I would have chosen It Was the Singing, mainly because I had the honor of reading that poem for Baugh at a function in N1 some years ago. I can't even remember the year, but I would have chosen that.
I think it might have been before you arrived, Jean, because that was the first poem that was read.
I heard it.
I
heard it.
Oh, but I commented
heard it and
afterwards.
I thought, oh yes, if I had a chance.
Yeah, but I commented afterwards about your memorable reading of it. A reading I heard about, although
I just want to say, I can't read anything now, but because you didn't invite me and I only just knew about this program. So I didn't have time to prepare something and to choose and to prepare myself to read it. But I just want to say that I was a student with Professor Baugh in those early days. I came on campus in 1954. Rex and people like Rex and Baugh, we were all students on campus at the same time. Together. And I have the honor of having been, I had two tributes read by Baugh to me during time. When I got the Philip Shirley Award, he made a tribute. And I have that on my computer somewhere, and I could have read a part of that. And also when I self-published a series of CDs of my speeches that I made in Toastmasters, he also introduced that. So those are some of very close. And I wrote a collection of short stories, and I sent it to him to have a look at them. But he did correct one of the stories, and I took his advice. So that's my connection with Professor Baugh.
With Baugh.
You know, great respect for his work and his mind.
I think I would be very happy. Dorothy, I see your hand, so I'm coming in just one moment. I'm sure many of us share that experience of there's something very the word that is coming to mind is not the word I want. The word that is coming to mind is thrilling. It is that too, but there's something very gratifying. There's something, it make your chest swell, it make your head swell when Baugh compliments you. I remember him writing a comment on a paper I did for a master's course, and you just feel like really sort of what is the word? Somebody give me the word. You feel approved, you feel good about yourself when Baugh says something positive about your work.
Yeah, sure. Agree.
Dorothy?
Mm-hmm.
Dorothy, your hand, I see your hand. Can you unmute? And camera would be great. Not hearing from Dorothy. Dorothy Noel? Yes, thank you, Susan Vidal. Validated is the word. That is the thing one feels. So as I said before, the floor is now open, both for readings and for memories, any other kind of comment that you would like to make in this space, or also to introduce yourself and say what your connection is with Baugh and what brought you here.
Has Dorothy not unmuted yet? I want to hear Dorothy first before I come on.
She hasn't unmuted yet. So please go ahead, Cecile.
Or you want Cameron, huh? I mean, hold on. Let me see. Let me see if I can do that.
It helps.
Yes. Start video.
I see your hand, Suzanne. So if we don't hear from Dorothy, you will come in after Cecile.
Right. Yes, I was privileged. Are you seeing my video?
Not yet.
I wonder what happened. I tried to do the video, but it's not happening.
But it's good that you have a picture up, so you can go ahead.
Right. I was a student of Professor Baugh in the 60s. That's over 50 years ago. He had just come from Cave Hill to Mona, and he taught at that time Victorian poets. And we were all students totally mesmerized by him. And the reason was that he had a sense, he was a true thespian. He had a sense of the dramatic. So I recall one particular lecture, it was on Browning. It was on Robert Browning's poetry. And we were gathered in N1 in that lecture hall. But you know, we're students taking our time to put our stuff together. And then we heard this stentorian voice coming from the passage outside. He started his lecture outside the room. And he was just quoting, you know, Child Harold from the Dark Tower came, you know, that poem by Robert Browning. And we were scrambling to our desks to try to get together. And he strided into the room, continuing his poetry, mounted the platform, and without missing a beat while we're scrambling to get together, he just continued this dramatic presentation. And, you know, we just adored him because none of his lectures were boring. No matter what, you just hung on to every single word. And he also, I know this, what you're talking about, the validation. I remember once after an exam, he saw me in the corridor and he said, Clayton, I can see that you enjoyed that paper. You know, he had just marked it. I don't know the grade, you know, but he said, I see that you enjoyed the paper. So, you know, I really had a lot of respect and admiration for Professor Baugh, the way he could impart to you just the love. We didn't have the privilege at that time to do West Indian literature. It was very, very golden age, very set in the old Cambridge curriculum. It was later that we got into, you know, just modern literature, they called it first. They called it modern literature. But nevertheless, he really opened our eyes. I mean, to have him read and explain the sonnets of Donne, it was really a privilege. He made us love English literature, and I'm forever grateful for that. That's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Cecile. I'm sure many of us share that gratitude. And some of us know I was too young to see him act in the memorable things that he did of Shakespeare and so on. But certainly, I mean, he said in one of the interviews, I think it was that same interview with Aisha, that, you know, as he lectured, he was acting. You know, so let's hear from another thespian. Suzanne. Lisa, I acknowledge that your hand was up, and we will hit. Oh, just before you speak, Suzanne, Jomo, I think we have controlled Dorothy Noel's microphone and camera, so she hasn't been able to undo it. So see if you can help out, please. And so Susan, Lisa, Dorothy, Tanya, I see you on camera. Is that because you would like to speak? No? Okay. No problem. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to share. I just wanted to share briefly. I suspect that as we hear about the impact of Professor Baugh on many people, we'll hear about his academic prowess and his creativity and all of those things that he was. But for me personally, I have had the privilege of having been touched by some people, educators in my life, people like Dr. Chang and Lisa Brown, who is here, and people who every year I feel led to speak of their impact on my life. And Professor Baugh, to me, the thing that I remember most about him is how gentle he was with me. Because I've always loved to read, I've always loved literature. And when I came to UA, my bachelor's degree is in literatures in English and cultural studies. And when I came to UA, I had no clue. Like, I had no clue. And he was so gentle and patient with me. And this is me now, a couple of decades later, in the role of literature teacher, both at the secondary and tertiary level. And I have the sense of him and his approach with me as I interact with my students. So that is, for me, my greatest memory, in addition to everything that everybody has said and will say. For me, it was just how patient and gentle he was with me as I navigated the arena of analyzing poetry and understanding that sometimes the tree is really just a tree and it doesn't have to mean anything. And
Yes.
yeah, so that for me, I will always take with me as I continue to do, in a very tiny way, what he did, which is to teach literature to students. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. So true. I mean, I remember saying to someone that as many others will say, he was really the embodiment of a gentleman. You know, the way he made, I can't recall, and I find it difficult to imagine him, shouting, doing that kind of thing, but the wit is sharp. And you said you can certainly get upbraided, but it will be without volume. And it will be without any kind of coarseness or crassness, but yes, and I really appreciate that there is what one might call a living legacy. I mean, we are embodiments of carrying forward, as Jomo said. So Lisa?
Yeah. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I am.
Oh,
Yes, we
great.
are.
It says unmute myself. So I'm reading Black Sand, and there is a story about this poem. We had a book launch at the time. I was what you call events coordinator. We used to have launches Sunday mornings, 11 o'clock. And Professor Baugh's new collection came out, Black Sand and New and Selected Poetry. And I think it was Dr. Buckner, who was head at the time, said, I don't know what he told him. He might have told him, come and read a few of the poems. Anyway, when Professor Baugh entered N1, he almost fainted. Now, to think that Professor Baugh would faint is ridiculous. But he was so shocked to see that lecture theater filled with people. And when he got to the podium, he said he came to read a few poems. He didn't expect this. And, it was one of those moments where we saw the man, Professor Baugh could be, overwhelmed. So that was a good experience. And I think that's why I've selected Black Sand. If the poem could open itself out and be wide as this beach of black sand, could absorb like black sand the sun's heat and respond to bright sunlight with fractions of tone, nuances that glamour would miss. If this could happen, if the poem could yield like black sand, if you look patiently, polished stones that fit in the palm of a woman's hand could be as cool as the sand where the wavelets splash over her feet. If the poem could be open like this beach to the breeze, like these trees that have known great winds, if the poem could be
Sorry, one moment, Lisa. We have lost your microphone. Back
I don't know
to
why. Where did you lose me? If the poem could be open like this beach to the breeze, like these trees that have known great winds, if the poem could be wide and open, like a love that is larger than desire, larger than fear, if the poem could be patient and wide as this evening, this beach of black sand, expecting the night without fear, the moon lifting over the sea, the largo of sunset spreading over the city as the jagged, wounded edges of our unworthiness are worn down by forgiveness, wave after untiring wave.
Thank you so much. I think we have, I noticed Dorothy's right. Dorothy's back, her hand is up. Can we, your turn, Dorothy. Still having technical difficulty, it seems. While we sort that out, I would just like to say, I won't read it, but many people have come in who wouldn't have been here for the introduction. I would just like to say that the session was named for one of his poems, but I spelled the old incorrectly. The poem Old Talk or West Indian History. It's 2 pages and a little bit. I'm not proposing to read it, but it's one of those poems, and he has a fair number that do this, that are written to capture a moment. And to put something down so that it can be referred to and remembered. And this is his poem recording the experience of sitting and chatting with UA notables Woodville Marshall, Keith Hunt, Bill and Nora Mailer, Joy Pilgrim, Lawrence I think is Carrington, and Roy Auger. And towards the end of it, he says, the poem says, but you can't, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin our descent. Excuse me, I'm sorry, something is happening on my computer. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin our ascent. Grip the armrest. Am I in the right poem? Yes, I am. Grip the armrest and pray. Smooth landings, mild evenings, and gracious patios. And the very end. But man, how you could ramble so? Yes, I had meant it to be purposeful, like history, but it's only old talk. So I kind of wanted to create a space where we could just speak freely our memories, our thoughts, our comments. Tanya, I see your hand. Please go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Again, Carolyn team, thanks so much for doing this. It has been a really great experience. I knew Prof. Baugh largely because he taught me, and I echo the sentiment that he was such a gentleman. And what I remember, what I'm thinking about is some years ago, don't remember exactly when, we had done, I think it was the first or second staging of the Auntie Roche Festival, and he was one of the poets we invited. We were having this open session, and a larger general audience than we had expected had come up. And Mel Cook and I were standing there with him, and he read his poems, and the audience was very responsive, and then other people were reading, and he turned to us and he said, with a kind of wonder that I would not expect of Prof. Baugh, and he was like, but they're really enjoying the poetry. And it was just, it made it more meaningful to me that he was amazed that the general public was generally enjoying and consuming poetry. And I mean, as a person who's made me enjoy poetry so much, that seemed par for the course. But, you know, he was just absolutely wonderful. And if there is time, I would love to read Lignum Vitae. Can I go ahead, Carolyn?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay. When the final carry down artist lock down this town and scorch the earth till not even lizard don't crawl, those who still living next morning will see me surviving still. Wood of life, salvation tree. I renew my phases of lilac, blue, and gold, and always green. I am a shady place for those who have lost their way to the house of the man who gave them stones for bread. I don't want to sound like a boasting, but too many small men in this 2x4 place is giant. And you only have to open your mouth and you can hang a shingle outside your gate with expert behind your name. And to think, so many people born and grow and dead and never feel the rain breeze blowing cool across Sincona from Catherine's Peak at middle day. Sometimes I feel my heart harden, but I'm not going nowhere. My root sink too deep. And when the 8 o'clock sun wake up the generations of stale pea and puke that stain the sidewalk by parade, I weep. I bloom choirs of small butterflies. Thank you.
Thank you. Choirs of small butterflies. He has these just really memorable lines. Carmenita, and then I just saw a hand on, oh no, the old brain.
And Margaret.
And Margaret, thank you. And Carolyn Dash. Okay. But Carmenita requested in chat, I think, to speak. So Carmenita, then Anne Margaret, then
Yes.
Carolyn.
Yes. Good evening, Miss Allen. I
Good
am sorry, I'm not in a position where I can show
For
my
yourself.
self.
Did
Yes,
you have a
but I would
picture
not.
up? No?
No, I
What's your
don't. But
name?
you know,
Okay, all right. Go
yes,
ahead.
I'm
Go
saying
ahead.
yes. So I
We're
would not.
winding down. So
Yes, I would not
yes.
like to miss the opportunity to contribute to this very um invaluable talk about Professor Baugh. And when I logged on late because XXX, when I saw you, I took a walk down memory lane, and I remember how you have touched my life, Miss Allen. Thank you, and all the other people. But since it's about Professor Baugh, I must say how we have lost a literary lighthouse, and how he guided so many of us that his legacy lives on. And he showed the light to people in from high and low places, locally, regionally, and internationally. And he was also much about inclusiveness. And I just want to thank him for the way in which he introduced me to literary criticism, love, death, and poetry, and how he spoke about Derek Walcott as if he was in love with him, and how he got me to love the poetry of John Donne. And so, even as years after, I still have my circle of friends. We all sat at his table. We were all guided by him. What can I say then? Celebrate, Eddie. Come on, let's celebrate.
Celebrate.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carmenita. And Margaret.
Hi.
Hey.
Thank you for doing this. Prof. Baugh means a lot to a lot of us. I'm glad that he was able to be at both my book launches. He spoke at both of them, and he's influenced many of us. I know Kai for sure, and me also. I do have a poem. I'm not going to read it in response to Eddie Baugh's Wonder Woman, because so many of the poems that you guys did today are my favorites. I have a lot of favorites. And when you had that discussion earlier about the carpenter's complaint, I have a carpenter's complaint story. I met it when I was in CXC. I met it in the exam. I had it in the exam and I was laughing. I just loved it so much. And then when I met him in person at UE, it was just one of those awesome moments. But the carpenter's complaint, thanks for letting us know that it was his penance poem. I really didn't know that because I missed that discussion at Calabash. It's just that there's also that other side, which I'm sure exists. As words tells you, he loves his parents and he has many poems on his parents' and that Sunday afternoon walk with my dad. So choosing the other carpenter was also that conflict that's there is because he's also been a son, a good son to his dad, who was a great dad to him. So there's that conflict also. But being the humble Portland person that he is, he's paying penance to the carpenter, right? When I was at the launch, Eddie Baugh's launch for Black Sand, and there's so many poems. I love most of his poems. I love Tales from the Rainforest. I love so many of them, but I'd like to read this one because the miracle of it. I wish you a leaf falling. My Black Sand book is actually in my office at work, but I have his poem on my phone. I wish you a leaf falling from the tree of heaven, catching rare angles of light as it twirls in its fall, ever so slowly. Such music, such flute notes, such silence as it brushes your lips and the turning earth pauses at their tremble. You snatch it, playfully it slips your fingers and falls at your feet and is still. In the fall of a leaf, such ascension. So I'm also saying thank you, Prof. Baugh. Thank you so much for everything that you've done for so many of us.
Give thanks. Carolyn.
Hi, are you hearing me? Are you
Yes,
hearing me,
hearing
Carolyn?
you. Yes, hearing
Oh,
you.
all right. Two short things I wanted to say. You mentioned the whole business of his comments validating us as students, and I can really relate to that because back in those days, you didn't just go to a professor's office for for consultation like that. And I remember trying to write a Matthew Arnold essay for his 19th century lit course, and just it was really killing me. And I whipped up my courage and went, and he went through it with me, and I remember I still have the essay, of course, written in pen, and at the end he put, and so you see it didn't turn out quite so bad after all. I got an A minus. I still have the essay. But the other thing was that, you talk about the circle of life. And when I went to teach in the high schools at St. Andrews, Sarah, his daughter, was my student. So can you imagine when parent-teachers consultation came and there was Prof. Baugh coming to talk to me about Sarah. And it turned out to be just such an amazing, of course, he played the role. He was now in the listener role and being the one kind of being schooled. He just transformed. And then I remember saying to him, the challenge is really to get them to get into poetry. And out of that conversation came the suggestion from him that we use dub poetry and Linton Kwesi Johnson's poems. And he lent me his his little cassettes, and I copied them. And, ta-ra, that was it. They got that entry into poetry, and the rest is history. So those are like little nuggets on Prof. Baugh.
I'll share with you all. Thanks. I'll share with you all another dimension of that circle of life. My mother taught Prof. Baugh at Titchfield in his final years of school. And then of course, he ends up teaching me and so on, so on, so on. So yeah, the cycle spins. We are officially 2 minutes away from our designated ending time. I would just like to check if there's anybody with something that you really cannot have us end without you saying. I will give a few seconds for a hand to go up or a message in the chat. I would like to, while we wait to see those hands, Oh, sorry, I was just trying to do something that I'm not finding out how to do. Yes, I would like to mention again that this was hosted by the initiative Off the Page. It's still something that has happened sporadically. We're still working on building it into something that can be a continuous, have continuous activities. Um, there was something else I thought. I'm sure there's something else that has slipped me, but such is life. If there are no burning sentiments, oh, I know what it is that slipped me. I wanted to put the email address for Off the Page in the Jomo. Please put it in the chat. It's Off the Page Roots, ROUTES for writing roots, Off the Page Roots at gmail.com. We have been recording. The intention is that this recording will become available to the public. We are going to work out how that happens, and I will be happy to send notices to people. I will post it on Facebook. There are many people who assisted in getting the word out, and that clearly was done effectively, and I'm very grateful. Rachel Mosley Wood, the head of the Literatures in English department, Beverly Lashley, chief librarian at the National Library of Jamaica, and several other people Lindsay Corridon from McMaster, and people in their various groups and chats. I really appreciate everyone being here. I spoke with Sheila Baugh earlier. She said she would join. I have not been able to identify her or Prof. Baugh's sisters in the gathering here. If they are, I would appreciate you raising a hand so we can know. But I'm very grateful for the presence, which attests to to how we treasure Prof. Baugh. And if you wish to have personal notice of when the video becomes available, you could drop your email address in the chat before we go, and we can let you know. In closing, because we are going to be obedient to the clock, in closing, I would like to read. Oh, sorry. There are two very short poems that I would like to close with, and I hope I can find the first one very quickly. You will understand why I choose it when I read it. It actually came to my attention when it was posted by Kai Miller on Facebook. It's called Obituary Page. I wonder why nobody can just die anymore. It's either you fell asleep or made your transition or were called to the Lord.
Eddie Baugh, the Jamaica poet.
Please pardon the enthusiasm.
So I'll start again. I wonder why nobody can just die anymore. It's either you fell asleep or made your transition or were called to the Lord or passed peacefully away. You never just die these days. Even in death, they have you posing. Past? So I'm never stop. I was at home. Well, listen me now. When time come, just tell them other one them for me. Mavis dead. And the poem ends there. And again, he has used a persona, but it is time for us to say quite simply, Eddie dead. And the one that I would like to close with is this. It has a long title. I'm noticing that the spotlight, I am not filling my screen yet. And I think my screen is the one being recorded. Here we go. Is the one being recorded. The title is almost longer than the poem. On being mistaken for Eddie Brathwaite, there being, of course, no such person, and with apologies to J. Alfred Prufrock. The poem. No, I am not Eddie Brathwaite, nor was meant to be. And anyhow, he's Kamau now, while I remain just plain Eddie. We give thanks for just plain Eddie. Thank you so much for being here. We are officially done. I will stay on just a little bit for anybody else who would like to add their email to the chat. But we are free to go. Give thanks. Thank you, Jomo.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. That was great.
Welcome. My pleasure.
Thanks, Celine.
That sounds like Dawn. Is Dawn there?
Yes. Yes.
Thanks for dropping by. Nice to have
man.
you. There's
Really
still
good
people coming
initiative. This was lovely. You know, we who are on the fringes
in. You mean like
and want
not
to
in
just
the
hear,
literature
be part of
department
it.
and not in the, yeah.
Yeah, yes, yes.
Yeah, very glad to have you.
Miss Allen.
Yes.
Carol here.
Oh, Bailey.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much. It's so good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Thank you for
I
coming.
so appreciate this. Yes, and all of my favorites were read, and you know I'm talkative. So in my old age now, I'm trying to listen more.
Listen to you.
But I'm really grateful. And you know, I put in the chat that I remember your paper on his poem. I don't know if you remember, you gave a seminar paper.
No,
Yes, and he came up to you. He came up to you with his in his old bar way and said, "I see you spoke intelligently about my poetry." I wrote it in the chat, so you have a
Yes.
record of
So it will be there. Good.
I wrote it in the chat, but I put my email in. I don't know if I have yours, but I'll get it from Rachel. Because
Okay.
I do want to connect with you, and I'm so glad to hear that Off the Page is still
It's still
alive
trying.
and well.
It's
Yes,
still
man. Yes, man. And I would love to support in any way. And but
excellent.
As you know, as one of my teachers, I would just love to be in contact with you again. So thank you so much, and thanks to Ronald, and you know, I can't remember all the other organizers and Rachel and everybody. Big up on yourself, and thanks a lot.
Carol, tell me how you heard about it. I'm just checking.
Rachel.
Okay. Okay.
Yes,
So
yes,
then perhaps the literature, the West Indian Literature Conference group would have got the information.
Yes. Most likely, yes. That's how I heard. But I'm so grateful. It was a wonderful event, and you know, just so rich and delightful. And your closing poems were just so on point. Thank you, and take care, Carolyn. And I'll email you as soon as I get a hold of your address. But mine is in the chat. Okay, Carolyn.
Good. Take care.
Much respect. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. We seem to be many of us still here. Is there anything anybody would like to say while they linger?
I wrote it in the chat, Miss Allen. Prof Boy is unforgettable.
This is true. This is
unforgettable. Can I try to sing for him? Unforgettable. That's what you are. I love him to death. He transformed my life. I mean, not only him, Miss Allen, I was just so happy to see you. And I would love to reconnect with you. I talk about you all the time too, and you know, and all the other people who, in fact, at Carol's book launch, Carol's book launch, I wrote a tribute to all of you. It called Our Peeps. Our Peeps. I'll share it with you when you give, because your name is in it.
I was going to say to you that you know that posse, Uno, Carol and Carmenita and
Silton and Janet and Claudette.
Yes.
Claudette and Stacy and Chin.
There's so much happened with that little posse. Yeah, it was good.
I know. Yes, we
Good to
thank him
have
for
you
touching
all.
our lives. Yes, thank
Yes,
you so
yes.
much.
Welcome.
Only on,
Okay. You think we can? Oh, I'm looking at participants, not at the chat. I want to look at the chat to see if it's still active. Okay. It says Julius, I see your hand. You may speak.
Hi, good evening. I
Good
mixed
evening.
up the time and got here a bit late. I
Oh.
I am Julius
Uh-huh.
Gunter from Jamaica.
Uh-huh.
A few years ago, actually in 2019, I created and co-hosted a podcast on Chapel FM, a community radio station in Leeds in the UK. And that podcast featured original readings by about 30 Caribbean writers, including Professor Baugh. I entitled that podcast Angles of Light, which is a line from his poem, I Wish You a Leaf Falling.
Right.
And I actually have Professor Baugh's reading, an appearance on that podcast that I wanted to share, but came a bit late.
Oh, is that something that you can put a link to in the chat?
I can. It's actually still available on the radio station's website.
Okay, so
And his
please do,
contribution
and
is
we'll share
actually
it.
his contribution is actually a reading of Angles of Light and another
Right.
poem. If you'd like to hear it, happily share that. If not, I'll just add a link and people can check that out in their own time.
Can we have both?
Okay,
Well,
I'll
no.
share it.
Share the link,
Yes,
but you have the reading that you can share with us?
I have it right now, yes.
Yes, please. Please
All
do.
right, let's go. He has published 3 collections of poetry. His latest is Black Sand, New and Selected Poems. He is well known as a critic of the late Derek Walcott, whose selected poems he edited. Professor Baugh will read 2 poems, I Wish You a Leaf Falling and a 19th century portrait, followed by the song Morning Has Broken by Cat Stevens.
I Wish You a Leaf Falling was a result of my looking at a leaf falling from the tree to the ground and realizing how such a seemingly inconsequential event can be so fascinating, can evoke such nuances of feeling and thought about life. The second, a 19th century poet, is based on a newspaper article I once read about an English plantation owner in Jamaica in the early 19th century, and more particularly about a portrait of him painted by an English portrait painter. The focus of the poem shifts from that of the writer of the article, from the white slave master to the black slave boy whom the master has beside him in the picture. I wish you a leaf falling. I wish you a leaf falling from the tree of heaven, catching rare angles of light as it twirls in its fall, ever so slowly, such music, such flute notes, such silence, as it brushes your lips, and the turning earth pauses as they tremble. You snatch at it playfully, it slips your fingers and falls at your feet and is still. In the fall of a leaf, such ascension. A 19th century portrait.
Okay.
When Mr. Robert Scarlett, master of Cambridge and Druckett plantations, stood for his portrait, the good man made a point of having his personal slave boy, Oliver, beside him, waist high, holding his game bag with which he'd ride to hunt wild hog and occasional runaways. At his other side, his favorite dog. How well the boy's dark visage serves design, matching the dark of the trees to cast in relief the pale, proprietorial white. Those were the good days. They didn't last. After the slave revolts of 1831, great houses, factories, everything was gone. Only the family tomb remained. And what of Oliver? History has left no afterword. A boy in a picture, a period piece on which poets may stretch out a fiction.
Give thanks.
You're welcome. All right, I'll
It's
take.
great to have his voice in this session.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thanks for doing this. It was well done.
Appreciate that. Sorry, I am muted. Happily, I was saying thank you all once again for being here. Happily, there are recordings, video and audio of Baugh reading his work. So we will have that in perpetuity, even when we are gone. Give thanks, everyone. We will now officially wrap and close this session. Take care. All the best for the new year.